Cool. Good evening, everyone. How are you? Feeling good? All right. So the topic for our panel session. JB, how are you? JB, how are you? You are that side, please. Thank you. This is my seat. All right. So the topic of our conversation today will be on VC or angel investor, finding the right funding partner. A conundrum that we have to solve for today. But before that, maybe we'll just show of hands. How many of you here have raised more than 10 million US dollars in total? 10 million US dollars in total. Okay. Between 5 to 10? Okay, 1% between 5 to 10, fantastic. Between 1 to 5 million US dollars. Between 1 to 5 million US dollars. And below $1 million? Below $1 million, okay, fantastic. So we have a lot of below 1 million US dollars companies over here. But let me just set the scene a little bit in terms of the VC and also the funding environment in Southeast Asia. According to most recent Google Temasek report, which I'm sure some of you have read, you know, there's in Southeast Asia over close to 37 billion US dollars flowed to the internet economy over the past 4 years. And the thing is, 24 out of that 37 actually went to unicorns, as well as aspiring unicorns. So 24 out of 37, which is a huge proportion. And 14 out of 24 went to e-hailing, and then the balance 10 billion US dollars went to e-commerce companies in Southeast Asia. In first half of 2019, you know, 7.6 billion was raised by companies in Southeast Asia, and you know, about $1 billion of that is seed in Series A. About 600 million is Series C and D, and then you know 5 billion of that is actually Series E, unicorn and above. So as we can see, there's a lot of trend towards the unicorns, towards the more sizable companies, so to speak. And out of that 7 billion, you know, 5 billion is Singapore-dominated companies, and then the balance, the larger majority is Indonesian companies, and after that, it's shared between Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. So as you can see, it's very centered towards Singapore as well as Indonesia. So that's a little bit of background for us today. So we have 4 fantastic gentlemen here today. Maybe we'll just go one by one and just do a 1-minute introduction about yourself and about what you do in terms of your contribution towards the funding ecosystem in Southeast Asia. We'll start with Navin first.
Hello. Hey, so I'm Navin. I'm the C Director for SOSV. I particularly look at the accelerator program called MOX based in Taiwan, but target Southeast Asia and also India. And I particularly look at emerging markets, startups that can cross borders around the Southeast Asia and also the emerging markets.
Cool. James?
Hi, my name is James Lette. I'm the Executive Director of the Manila Angel Investors Network. We're a seed and pre-seed investor, a group of angel investors in the Philippines.
Hi, Field Pickering. I work for a fund management company in Singapore. We manage a few different funds, a few different venture funds, one of which is Seed Myanmar, which is an early stage investor in technology companies in Myanmar.
I'm Jamaluddin Bujang from Gobi Partners. I'm based in KL. We have funds, most of our funds actually regional funds, meaning ASEAN, focusing in Series A and B and C.
Cool. Maybe we'll set the scene a little bit. So maybe we'll start from JB, Jamaluddin Bujang. Tell us a little bit more about the Malaysian funding ecosystem. What do you feel, you know, is what's the progress so far since you actually took up the job at Gobi?
Okay. Well, let me start like 5 years ago. Things were doing very well. I think if you look at the market on the supply of companies, startup companies and all that, things are doing very well. There's a lot of new companies being created 5, 6, 7 years ago. Along that, funding has also increased in terms of numbers. But if you notice that there's a lot of funding that comes from the government, because I used to be in MEFCAP, in government-owned VC, and we know that funding coming from government has been dropping. But from the private sector has been going up, and also from foreign investors as well. Now going forward, I think the numbers should be increasing, but my worry is because of the current concerns on economic situation at the moment. I hope the government will continue to support, especially the government-owned VCs, to provide funding for tech companies. Now, there's a lot of there's a lot of demand for capital is still here in Malaysia. I'm seeing there's no drop in deal flows in Series A, seed, and all that. In fact, there's more demand for Series B and Series C as well. So again, I think I want to see more money coming from the government, from the private sector, from corporate, and also from foreign VCs coming here looking at funding at local companies.
Cool. How about Phil? Tell us more about Myanmar and the funding environment in Myanmar. I think I'm not very familiar, so maybe you could educate the crowd a little bit about Myanmar.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, not many people are familiar with Myanmar, so we certainly need to get more people there to look at the market. So we started looking at Myanmar in about 2016. So 2015, the country started to open back up again. People got interested in the country. In 2016, there was a democratic election, and there was quite a bit of hope for Myanmar then. We were spending some time there, and we realized that at a macro level, it looked really interesting. 60 million people, half of them are under the age of 30. Everybody has a mobile phone. The mobile phone penetration rate is something like 90%. So people don't have a bank account, but they have a mobile phone. Everyone's young. Everyone understands the power of digital tools. So we came up with the idea that we would see if we could raise a little money, make some investments. We weren't sure if we could generate any investor interest in Myanmar, and we weren't sure that we'd be able to find anything to invest in. Slowly, we were able to do both. And over the last 2.5 years, we now have a portfolio of 10 companies. But no one really, the country has continued to persevere without real participation from regional investors. And there are good founders in the country, and there's some good startups in the country, but we haven't seen like the next phase of Myanmar companies, and we're investing like seed stage, pre-Series A. We haven't yet seen these companies, whether they're our portfolio or other companies that we haven't invested in, go from taking seed investment to actually doing a real proper Series A. So I think that's the next step for Myanmar, both to be able to raise Series A money and to be able to raise Series A money from regional investors. And the other thing that I would like to see, and I'm interested in seeing, and hopefully at some point we will see, is companies that started in Myanmar expand beyond the borders of Myanmar, expand into Thailand, into Malaysia, across Southeast Asia.
Cool. How about James? Are there exciting stuff happening in the Philippines that we should know about?
Oh, there's quite a lot of exciting things happening in the Philippines. I'd encourage you all to go, particularly one exciting thing at the moment with the volcano erupting. But in terms of the startup ecosystem, I mean, the funding environment, I mean, the Philippines is a young ecosystem. It's developing. In the last few years, it has picked up quite significantly. So going back even 10 years ago, there was, pre the dot-com boom, there was an influx of money. Then there's been quite a lull since then. But the last few years, my group, the Manila Angel Investors Network, we're about 3 years old, and we've gone from a handful of people, and we've now got nearly 70 investors. The ecosystem itself has got to the point now where there's VC money from Singapore and other markets is crowding into Philippines, and there's starting to be a competitive tension within the VC market. It used to be that take it or leave it, but now there's more of a move to get in investing before someone else takes the deal. So there's some really good green shoots appearing in the Philippines, and the ecosystem itself is developing. There's some great founders coming along, so some big things will happen this year and next year in the Philippines.
Fantastic. So Navin, you're one of the Southeast Asian director for SOSV, who also owns the brand China Accelerator, if I'm correct. So paint us a picture about China Accelerator and what's happening over there in China that makes it so exciting in terms of the funding ecosystem.
Well, one thing's for sure, the trade war has made things very interesting. Okay. So on one hand, China is going through a slowdown period of external funding as US clamps down on the number of funds that can invest in China. However, domestic local China funding is still going strong. In fact, there's a lot of money in China that's now coming out of China. And in that context, entrepreneurs in China, whether they are foreign or local domicile, are being encouraged to explore beyond the China market. As China gets more matured, and they go into areas of AI, deep tech, and health tech, they begin to look at other emerging markets in the Southeast Asia region especially that can bring this advantage of the tried and tested method in a world billion sandbox. So that is predominantly what's happening. But there's no shortage of people entering the China market as well, especially in areas of more matured solutions. For example, no one's going to go into China with e-commerce, but you can go into China with tourism, travel, medical. These are big demands in China still, especially a lot of areas in enterprise, SaaS. Those are areas where you find some Malaysian companies are exploring, and you also begin to find some more matured markets like Australia, New Zealand, beginning to explore China in that context. So there's a lot of interesting dynamism happening in China, both in, out, US and without US, and that ongoing is happening. And we are seeing this context happening where Malaysian startups have a valid reason, especially in the conjunction with Visit Malaysia year this year. There's a lot of interest in tourism from China coming in, and also with new revision of policies like removal of visa waiver. So that has shown a lot of potentials.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the next theme, which is acquisition of capital. How do you actually fundraise? So my first question is to Field, actually. So, when we talk about fundraising, when we talk about investor looking at startups, one of the three things that they look at is usually people, market, and product. So maybe if you could expand a bit further, do you just look at these three, or is there any other criteria or variables that you look at when it comes to investing in startups?
Yeah, regardless of the market, whether it's Myanmar or Southeast Asia or anywhere, I think early stage investing, which is where we've prominently invested, it's largely about the founder, and even more so in Myanmar. So I would say more than 50% of an investment is made based on the feeling that we have when we sit down for the first time with a founder. I think the business plan and the plan to execute that business plan means less than the interaction that you get immediately when you sit down with a founder. Once you sit down with a founder, you feel comfortable with that person, then you explore things like what the business model is, what the market is. But we're very much founder focused in terms of the investment, and there's a few reasons for that. Starting a company is challenging. Their highs or lows. We want to make sure that the founder has the kind of the constitution to withstand the ups and the downs. We also want to make sure that we pick a founder that we're compatible with, that we can work with over time, that we can coach. The founder needs to be coachable. So it's very much about the founder. In early stage investing, the founder has a little bit more latitude probably to pivot and make adjustments. And if we find the right founder, it increases our chances of being a successful investor.
Cool. Just to follow up on that. So yes, we know in order to, you got to back the right founders. But do you base it on certain data points, or is it a gut feeling almost? This guy, I think this guy is going to make me millions and billions. This guy has the right attitude, wears a proper dress, talks well, very humble. How do you spot these in the founder during the first meeting or the subsequent meetings?
Yeah, well, I tend to be overly optimistic. Just about anyone that I sit down with, I'm like, oh, that person's great. This is a great idea. So I think the key is to have a balanced team. For our Myanmar team, we have an optimist, a pessimist, and kind of a pragmatist.
Okay.
So we get the balance of the three. But for me, it just kind of comes down to gut. There are a couple of ways to describe it, like the airport test, I guess, is one of them. If you're stuck in an airport for 3 hours with this person.
Airport test?
Okay. Airport test. If your flight,
cool.
well, I don't know if I'm American, obviously. If you've ever spent time traveling domestically, your flight was probably delayed. Okay. But if you have to be in an airport for 3 hours because your flight's delayed, will you enjoy spending 3 hours with this person? Okay. Irrespective of the business, irrespective of anything else, just would you like to spend 3 hours with this person? Now that's sort of the kind of the personal test that I go through when I sit with someone.
Cool. You got to be likable almost. All right, James, red flags. Whenever you do any startup meetings, you look at this guy is a red flag. What are those criteria? When it comes to a startup pitch that you say, this guy is not going to make it.
Yeah, look, it is. As Field was saying, it's more art than science, but the red flags for us, it all comes down to implementation and grit. So that comes through when you're talking to someone, but we also, that we talk to people that deal with them, to their employees, to their clients. So we get that sort of reference base. But also, in terms of red flag, the key one for us is integrity. So if it's someone that we, if there's trust, one of our members has a saying, if if there's any doubt, there's no doubt. So if we're going through due diligence, we're looking at someone in detail. If something that they've told us isn't the case, then that raises some doubts as to their integrity, and then that will cast doubt as to whether we go ahead or not.
Okay. So Navin, Y Combinator says, when it comes, any YC startup has to grow like 5 to 7% per week in order to be, to be a successful startup. What is the growth rates that is perhaps more palatable in Southeast Asia? And perhaps seed stage companies, what sort of growth rates will attract investors? Series A and above, what sort of growth rates will attract investors? And unicorn and above, what sort of percentage growth in terms of revenue, in terms of key metrics? Maybe you could share with the audience today.
So I think a lot of it depends on the market itself. For example, if you talk to a lot of European startups, they will find that the pace of China is way too aggressive, which is understandable. I mean, China is a 996 working culture. But if you go that down to, say, Southeast Asia, things slow down a bit. But if you go into Singapore and Hong Kong, it's quite a financial hubs, the pace increases. So I think a lot of time depends on which market. It actually diversifies across. It's not so standardized as compared to, say, YC in US, because you are a stable, matured market economy. Whereas here, it really depends on which market, and it all varies accordingly. China, without a doubt, you have to follow the China pace, because that is the market standard. Southeast Asia, it really going to depends where you're going. Different markets will move at different paces, and you have to adjust accordingly for those markets. Cool. So unfortunately, you can't really have that kind of metrics, but you have to be the metrics that were according to each market as you go in. So when we have startups that cross borders in different markets, they move at different speeds in different markets depending on the market. For example, if in Indonesia, you got to move pretty fast because things are quite aggressive there. But if you're going to places that are still very emerging, slow down a bit. Because if you move too fast and across the whole board, you're going to pretty much burn yourself out and your resources, and it's not going to pace accordingly for the market that you need.
So let's say if I'm a fintech startup based out of Indonesia, I'm seed stage, what sort of growth in terms of like my yearly monthly active users in terms of growth rates that will be palatable to, say, a Series A investor?
Unfortunately, we don't tackle in the Series A, so we just do only seed. So most of the time, we take in startups. They have monthly active users, maybe about possible 10,000 and above, and we consider it as a sweet spot.
10,000
yeah, around there. Because typically, we take in startups after they've gone through the seed ideation or with some kind of traction, anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000. And the idea is to grow from 10,000 and above and increase your monthly retention rate. For example, the idea is taking you at 12% monthly retention rate and increase up to 15 to up to 30%. That will be the sweet spot that we look at in the right stage pre-A, but let's see.
Cool. All right. JB, so not many people actually know that VCs also do fundraising, right? They have limited partners. So paint us a picture, how do you do fundraising with limited partners? Is it the same as us, us humble startups pitching to you, right? Is there a difference?
We're just like you. You come, we beg for money.
Beg for money, yeah?
You come to us begging, we go up there and beg for money. It's no difference. But before I go on, I just want to pick up the point made by James earlier on the integrity. You mentioned about integrity on the entrepreneurs. Another thing that I really hate most, when they come and pitch to you, is when they start to drop names. I don't know what happens in Myanmar and Singapore and all that, but it does happen here. I've come across a few actually. In fact, as recent as a few months ago. No matter what's your business case, the first thing, if you start dropping names, especially politicians, that is definitely a no-go. It really turns me off.
Politician, no.
Politicians, every other businessman and all that.
All right.
And we do background check as well. If they have received funding from other VCs before, we do call the other guy and say, hey, what do you think of this guy? In fact, we just got the application last week. This guy received a grant from another agency, I think about 8-9 years ago. And we called that agency, and they said, no, not this company, not this person even.
Okay.
So now we're checking whether that company has changed name, and the person has sold his shares to another company. Chances are that is the case. You know, so I haven't even met these people, but you know, the moment I know that the company has been changed, the name has been changed, and the ownership has changed, and yet they're using the past record to show that they are worthwhile, that they have received grant from or funding from the company. I think that's gone case as well. I think that's why I think integrity is very important. You have to, you know, these things very easy to check. You know, I think people must know that, you know, just be truthful. If you fail, it's fine. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, you have to be successful only after that I can fund you. Like you know, he said earlier, there's a lot of gut feel as well in play when you evaluate your entrepreneurs. So that's one thing that you all have to be careful. So the question again on the
LP,
VC,
LP,
on the LP, yeah. So you know, the thing about VC is we raise funds, and we raise funds from everywhere, and it's not easy raising fund because we're raising fund in a big number. I mean, my lorry may raise 5 million, you know, 6-7 million, but we're raising 100 million, you know. So it's like 10 times bigger, 20 times bigger than the amount that you raise. So we have to see more people. And of course, there's a lot of track record. You must have a track record. Even if you're a first timer, for example, then it's personal track record. And your partner's track record comes to play as well, right? And your understanding of the whole market and the big picture, not maybe not as specific as the companies or technologies, but you must have a track record. Then you must be in the industry for a certain time at least, right? So we have to go out and raise. We went to the US twice in the last 6 months. That process takes a very long time. You know, first time we met about 20 people. Second time, in 3 months after that, we met another about 25 people. And you know, you don't go out and raise money from the first visit. I think the same thing applies to the entrepreneurs as well. Yeah, you have to develop, and sometimes it takes like 2 years to just get your first money. Maybe I'm a lousy fundraiser, but SOSV may be better, but you know, there's a lot of things are in play actually. So again, track record, of course, is very important.
Okay.
To the VCs. In your case, a lot of you are maybe first time entrepreneurs. So track record may not be important, but we evaluate on other things.
What sort of returns do you have to promise the LPs? Is it like 30-40% per annum, 50-100%?
It's opportunity cost. Let's say you're a family office, right? You have 300 million to spend to invest in a VC fund, right? With your 300 million, you can put in a bank, and that gives you 3%, 2.5%, whatever, but no risk at all. Or you can put 300 million into high-risk hedge fund, for example, right? So there's a trade-off. But if you take an average, for example, let's pick a stock market. So let's say KLIC, I think last time the numbers was like in the early teens, maybe 12-13% growth every year. So if I come to you, right, I'm going to promise a return of, I'm going to give you 8%, which is better than 3% you put money in the bank.
Fixed deposit.
But you have 300, say, look, I can invest in a index fund and give me 12% a year.
Correct.
Right? So my promise to you has to be bigger than at least stock market, performance at that market. So that implies anywhere between, 15 to 25% IRR. So that should be about the range. Otherwise, you are not attractive because you as a person who has the money to give
15 to 25%.
You have alternative. I don't have much. Mine's focused. So that's how it goes.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about exuberance, right? So we've heard a lot about valuation being very high in Southeast Asia. So James, we heard WeWork happen, right? So WeWork happened, and valuation got slashed by 80%, if I'm not mistaken. So have you seen a certain normalization in terms of valuation that startups request from VCs these days? What do you think?
I can only comment on the Philippines, and I would suggest that WeWork didn't have an impact in terms of uplifting the valuations anyway, but valuations were getting probably a bit beyond where the market thought they should be. They haven't come off, but they've probably plateaued a bit, and they may be returning more to a normalization simply because of time catching up with them. But WeWork really hasn't had an effect. It was more the Silicon Valley people sort of thinking, can I get a Silicon Valley valuation in the Philippines, was probably more the challenge that was faced.
Cool.
I just want to add, it seems only, you know, I don't want to mention the SoftBank, but the thing is, that's what happened when you give someone so much money. You know, you got 100 billion to disburse. You know, you want to find winners, right? And you want to make them bigger. And you want them to grow very fast. But you know, you will be spoiling the whole market if you know, applying unreasonable valuation. I bet the same person, when you do a valuation, when that company was still small and Series A and Series B, you won't give that kind of multiple. So again, somehow in that case, I think the VC has to be blamed as well to a certain extent. And it affects other VCs like us, you know, and affects you at the end of the day as an entrepreneur.
Cool. Field, I want to ask you a little bit about how there's a bit of a asymmetric relationship between, you know, how VCs or investors, they've been in, you know, they've done fundraising many times more than startups. Of course, they know more about certain terms like liquidation preference, about board seats, about certain terms in the shareholders agreement and share subscription agreement, which, you know, sometimes, you know, startup founders do not know. And maybe it's your first time. And because you are doing angel investment and seed funding investment, you probably meet a lot of these guys, a lot of first-time founders. So what do you think is, what do you think startup founders can do, right, in order to ensure that they become on a level playing field with the investors so that they don't get, well, taken advantage of, to say the least?
Well, I think the answer is pretty simple. Pick your investors wisely. So you're in a very good position if you're a startup and you have a number of term sheets, and you can pick and choose who you want to work with. Our approach has always been to be founder friendly. I mean, I think it's kind of a cheesy word, so there's probably a better one there, but we're focusing so much on the founders when we invest at early stage that we certainly are by no means out to get the best possible deal. We want to get a fair deal both for the founders so they're properly incentivized, but also for the investors, for our investors, for taking the risk on us and for us taking the early risk on the company. I think what we say is we're less concerned about a position of control and more focused on a position of influence. We want to work with founders and founding teams and help them and contribute as much as we can. And I, like every other American, have a law degree, and I take a somewhat relaxed approach to early stage shareholders agreement, in large part because I know that we're in there somewhat temporarily as the most influential investor. At some point, hopefully, the company does well enough where it gets a real sophisticated Series A investor, and we get pushed to the back of the room. And then the shareholders agreement oftentimes is renegotiated. So when we come in early stage, we want the founders to pick us over other investors, and the reason they do that is because we have a reputation of being fair. And so I'm probably overly relaxed. Hopefully, no limited partners in the room, but by being fair, we build a reputation of being a group that founders want to work with.
Cool. How about Navin? You know, your accelerators, do you actually give certain guidance or coaching in terms of you know, what to look out for in terms of fundraising, you know, the terms, to ensure that you negotiate founder-friendly terms?
Definitely. I mean, whenever they are in the program and when they're on site, whether they're in Taiwan or Shanghai, part of that module is actually bringing in financial advisors and to advise them on their existing term sheets as well as future term sheets. And it doesn't end there when they exit the program because it's a lifelong thing. So if any one time they come up to an investor and they come up to us and say, hey, I met this investor, this term sheet, I'm not so sure about this thing, we can pull in the legal experts to advise them on that. So the idea is more like a long-term cycle where you don't only help them in the program, but also post-program, especially in areas of legalese that they may not be familiar with. And the whole idea is also because you want to secure your investment, you want to get ripped off, and also in a way help them to also inform other founders basically that these are the things you need to be aware of. Because sometimes when you get founders who are actually from way off the fringe, for example, from the remote areas of Pakistan or Bangladesh, they are really away from things like this, which gives them an opportunity to understand and they will not be aware that they may be leeches in the market. They may be charging them like 24% of their company, and they think it's normal. So those are the areas that we try and educate them and make sure that they are well equipped so that they can also cascade it down to their other fellow peers to also think about those things and make sure they don't get ripped off and actually they get full benefits of what they're investing in their company.
Cool. JB, VCs, why exactly are they investing in companies? Do they want dividends? Do they want to control the company for a long period of time to create empire? Or they want to exit? What exactly do VCs do? What's the end game? What's the end game for VCs?
Yeah, the shortest answer is, of course, we want to make money. There's nothing wrong making money. That's how we all started anyway, because I'm a fund manager. I'm better than other advisors in a bank, for example, wealthy clients. You give me money, I invest for you, and we both make money, right? That's how it all started. But I think nowadays, as a VC, right? Nowadays, you have to think a bigger picture. If you look at VC, at the end of the day, if you look at the bigger picture, we are building an ecosystem. We are trying to solve problems, right? And because if you don't do that, somebody else will do it for you, right? And that's where the relationship between the country and the VC coming from the private side, both have to work together. The government has to do whatever necessary to make sure that the ecosystem can survive, in long term, and VC at the same time benefiting from that, so they can develop and fund good companies. So in the bigger picture nowadays, as I see it, we are solving problem. Of course, like I said, we want to make money, but that's not, the main idea they want to invest in money.
But how
that is
do you
given.
make money?
Making money is given.
Yeah, how do you make money? Actually, how do VCs make money?
Oh yeah, you have to grow the company. I mean, from the start, at Series A, you're investing in a company worth 10 million. You want to get 10 times return. You have to grow the company to 100 million valuation, right? So, and how you grow from 10 million valuation to 100 million, that is our job. There's so many. Of course, there's so many things. We have to hire people. We have to fire people. We have to pivot. There's so many things that happens after you putting your first money into the company. That is the trade that, the skill that you must have. And that skill doesn't come from just one person. You have to work as a team, and you have to work with the entrepreneurs as well. You have to work with people outside, and it's a whole ecosystem has to work. It has to work in one coherent manner.
Mm-hmm. So James, you're one of the is it directors of the Manila Angel Investment Network? So, you perhaps represent a group of angel investors. So do they have the same goals as what JB mentioned? They want to grow the company as large as possible, to exit perhaps one day, or do they have goals such as, all right, I just want to be with this guy, earn dividends for the long run, and maybe do a bit of mentorship? What do you think?
I'd suggest that it's similar in a way to VC. It's just a slightly different emphasis. I mean, dividends is not in the picture. It's more, people angel invest for a huge gamut of reasons. Some simply do it, they want a social impact, so they're looking for that social triple bottom line return. Others are purely doing it because they're hoping to find the next unicorn to make a lot of money. And others, mainly though, people want to give back to the ecosystem. So they want to do more than just put their money in, because they can put their money anywhere in the world. They can invest in any market, but our members want to invest in the Philippines. They want to grow the Philippine ecosystem. And that's, Main as an organization, we're a not-for-profit. We're simply a platform that connects money with startups. So we don't take a fee, we don't take a carry. It's simply we connect them, and then individuals invest. But people want to invest through our group. They want to open doors, they want to mentor, they want to grow a business and contribute, and also learn at the same time. The benefit people get from being exposed to new technologies, new ways of thinking and innovating, that's also of great value to angel investors.
Cool. Navin, share with us your most successful moment, being an investor. What is it? That one thing that you could say, this is the highlight of my career, or has it happened or has it not happened?
A lot of things are happening in concurrently.
Okay.
First of all, I like to see the fact that we got some Malaysian startups invested in.
Okay.
So you put them on the stage, and to see them succeed. For example, one of the best case studies we have to date is still Awesome from Magic. They went through us, from there they went to Y Combinator. So it's like a good story to see the Malaysian startup can actually go to Y Combi. And we help them get them there.
Alright.
And to
Which one?
see
There are
that-
three. Awesome,
Awesome.
Droppy, and
And
Damakan.
well, if the really early days is PictoChart. They were the first.
PictoChart, oh,
yeah,
yeah.
so like, and it's good to see Ai Ching again.
Yeah.
And then it's like, to her, it's like, wow, I didn't know we have an alumni community in Malaysia.
Oh, cool.
So that helps because I see that it's a good achievement that we get to put Malaysia up on the map, and you get these guys up on the stage, people actually know that they are able to achieve this. Hopefully inspire others that it is possible. That's one. On the other areas will be what we see through the cross-collaboration of different startups, and the achievements of how they can cross-collaborate and exponentially grow themselves, because we then become like a platform for them to get to know each other and find that, hey, you're the payment system in India, I'm doing e-commerce in India, we should team up together. And that's suddenly your solution. Or you get someone from, say, Vietnam, who wants to enter Indonesian market, and you realize, I don't have a partner there. Wait, we have an investment there who can cross with you guys. So that is what you see, it helps grow the whole ecosystem. That is actually a very satisfaction thing, because you realize your investment is going further than just investing in a company, you're actually growing an ecosystem. And in the process, you actually come up with multiple solutions that actually cascade and solve even bigger solutions.
Field, what's your best investment so far, and why is it the best investment so far?
I think of recent investments, if we look at Myanmar, it's too early to tell.
Okay.
I think, but I'll answer the question that you just asked about, like when do you have moments of real excitement as a venture investor? I think obviously there are moments of elation when you raise money, because it is hard work. And the other thing I will say is whether you're raising $1 for your company or raising 100 million for your fund, that the pain is the same. The process is just about the same, only a little bit different, but it's painful raising money. And if you learn the skill and you have the stomach for it, whether you're raising for the first time for a company or for your fifth fund, it's a good skill set to have, and it gets no less painful as you go. But I think anytime you finalize an investment is really rewarding, because you've gone through a bit of a journey with a company. You've met the founders, you've done due diligence, you've dug into it, you've helped them bring in other investors, and so in addition to the need to make money, because we're certainly in the business to make money for our investors, it can be really rewarding to see a founding team finally get funded and use that funding to grow the business.
Fantastic. So I'm pretty sure all of you have some burning questions. We will now open the floor for some questions. Of course, we Southeast Asian are very shy. We're waiting for that first person to raise his or her hand up. So who's the bravest first person in the room to raise his or her hand up to ask the first question? If not, I'm going to pick someone, because I know like half people in this room. Sure. Nobody's going to ask anything? Okay, Wijon, come. One question. Wijon, one question for our panelists here. Oh, you still want to think? Okay.
Hi, and so I've kind of tried to be a VC a long time ago, so I know kind of how it works. But what do you think that is the biggest? Why do you think that a lot of companies they struggle to find the right VC partners? I mean, do you think that it's because they are overvaluing themselves? Is it because they cannot communicate the problem they're trying to solve? Is it because sometimes they just, they're just not ready for it? I see a lot of, I've also angel invested quite a lot, and I know that, I sometimes try and help them fundraise, even though I shouldn't be doing it. But then I realize that it doesn't really work as well. Like as an angel investor, I cannot help my founders go and fundraise. So I'm trying to figure out like how can we make this a lot easier for them. Why do you think is the fact that they cannot find a right partner?
Maybe we'll give this question to James. Yeah, so because you have the two roles, right? So VC as well as angel.
Yeah. The short answer is I don't know, but to have a stab at it, I guess it's probably you know, you have an expertise in things that you do a lot. And most people raising money, particularly with Series A, they've never done it before, so they don't know what they want, what they're doing. And they're also, in some cases, they're putting up an appearance that they think that, you know, they think is a beauty show, so they're trying to look a certain way when they perhaps should be a bit more open and honest with each other so that they build a relationship rather than a sales transaction. So that would be my initial suggestion, and I'll ask my colleagues.
Yeah. JB, you want to add?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that relationship doesn't work. Of course, there are many examples. But one of the things that I notice is sometimes entrepreneurs are very stubborn.
Isn't that good?
It can be good, can be bad. You know, look, VC, and we are, you know, we've been in business for quite a while, and we also evaluate other companies, even in the same sector, you know, let alone with other sectors, right? And we have a broader view, I would say. And our decision is always been pegged to what's going on in the broader sense, right? Entrepreneur on the other side is very specific, you know, operation, how to make money, how to control costs and stuff like that. And sometimes you know, as a VC, you know the direction is gonna be this, and it's gonna happen. And based on my previous experience, another company having the same problem something will happen if you continue to do that. But when you talk to the entrepreneurs, they say, no, this is not going to be different. Because situation different and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, things, you know, eventually it happens. Something bad happen again. So again, I think I'm not blaming the entrepreneurs, but what we can learn is work together, must maintain relationship with the VCs, and be free to change your course when it's needed.
Okay.
There's reason for change, and in fact, changes can be good.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Next question from the floor. All right, we have one question from the lady on the right. Sorry, on your right. Yeah, stage left. Doesn't seem to work. All right. Oh, nope. Okay, fantastic. Nope, doesn't work. Maybe you can just shout out the question.
Okay,
I'll try.
we can hear you.
I'll try.
which requires more information.
Cool. So I think 3 parts to the questions there. Number 1 is on due diligence. You know, what really do you look at when it comes to due diligence, right? What are the perhaps red flags? What do you look for, right? And the sub-question will be on business model. You know, what sort of business models do you look at? And the third question, if I understood that correctly, if you were the Sultan of Brunei, right, what would you do to really spur the funding ecosystem over there? So I got 3 questions. Let's do the due diligence and business model question with Navin first.
Okay, so on our side, well, typically we go through the startups in the calls, and we tell them what is right and wrong. So even if you don't invest in them, they actually know upfront to us. Because we do multiple calls with them. And it's only the final call that you know that, okay, fine, we're going to go ahead. But the first initial calls, it can also be something that we look at. So we had calls before with a startup from Vietnam. And when we're going through its whole financial model, everything, we had mentioned that, you know what, I don't think you're ready right yet. Come back to us in 6 months and show us the numbers, and we'll take a look again. And the guy was more than happy. He said, great, at least I know what to do for the next few months. I will come back to you along the way. If I find something that I've increased in 3 months, I'll come back to you as well. I said, sure, go ahead. So these are all free resources for them without even having to go through and say a yes or no. And that is part of the way we expose the due diligence to them. So we tell them these are the rights and the wrongs. Unfortunately, there's no way to structurize this and put it out in the market. But I think the only way to do that is maybe when you do it through a managed system like workshops. But again, when you're having so many multi-borders, it's very hard to scale things like this. So one of the things we are also looking at is if people turn to our YouTube channels, we are beginning to put VC lingo explanation online. So that people get to understand. It's kind of like, okay, you're confused about it, what does carry mean? What does this mean? So that's part of a way of scaling globally, so anyone can have access to it. But if talking about more localized stuff, the best way is through calls. Because if we see some potential, we call, we will tell them over there, it's like, okay, your cap table is really messy. One of the things people don't realize is that institutionalized sophisticated investors from globally, whether US or China and stuff, when they come to Southeast Asia and you have a lot of the local family offices, the cap table can be extremely messy. And then they back off and they stay away. And a lot of them don't know this. So we try to have an early head start. So make sure your cap table is not messy, because later once you go to the international stage, you're going to have big problems. People will turn away from you. So again, all these things are part of this due diligence that we try and convey through calls. But no way that we can actually systemize it, scale it. So it's a combination of a few different things.
Cool. Yeah. On business model, you know, what sort of business model is the in thing right now, would you say? And what do you shy away from, right? Would you accept any sort of business model?
Yeah, again, we're specific to the Philippines. So the Philippines, probably, you know, it's not probably that far ahead of Brunei, I don't know, but my group didn't exist 3 years ago. So, you know, it's gone from nothing to now having 70 people actively investing in startups. So, you know, where the pool is too small in a way in the Philippines to say we're only going to look at this and this business model. So we do, you know, we'll look at anything. And to do that, so that we don't get overloaded with people like yourself who don't know what we're looking for sending us things in, we actually go out to the ecosystem every few months and present how do we do our due diligence, what are our criteria, and what are we looking for, so that people are aware before they come to us. And we probably do more mentoring than investing. So we work with, you know, when we identify a good founder with a good idea, but they're not quite ready yet, we can spend up to a year working with them one-on-one to get them to the point where they can pitch to our group for investment. So, you know, I know that there is, for your knowledge, there's a group called the ASEAN Angel Alliance, which Mban, who may or may not be in the room, but as well as my group. So there's a representative in each country. There are only 2 countries are Laos and probably Brunei. So we're looking at how we can develop the ecosystem for angel investing in those other 2 countries. So you should probably, you know, reach out, have a chat after this and see if we can connect into that. I know Seed Stars is doing something in Brunei as well. So there's things that we can do. So
JB, if tomorrow you become the Sultan of Brunei, right, what would you do in order to attract more investors to come on board and set up shop in Brunei, not Malaysia, because we always talk about Malaysia, right? So Brunei.
I don't work. Brunei is a bit tricky. I don't know whether there's better countries as a comparison, because the population is very small. I mean, here in Malaysia with 33 million, 35 million people, I still think relatively quite small. Maybe it's just medium size, you know, but population of 5-6 million is very, I don't know what I can do. If I'm the Sultan of Brunei, probably dig more oil, I don't know.
But what would you do in terms of policy decisions, right? What would you sign to entice more investors, the Coslas, the light speeds, the benchmarks of the world to set up shop in Brunei maybe? I don't know. What would you do?
You know, again, it boils down to your market size. What you want to develop a tech? Again, some people here may have a better idea. If you want to develop the tech sector in Brunei, maybe the easiest is on fintech side. So maybe you should focus on fintech maybe.
All right.
Obviously the e-commerce, and then when you go deeper, things like deep tech, for example, of course that's more difficult. Just focus on what you think you can make do with your population size.
All right.
So
focus on something.
Fintech would be probably the first start.
Cool. Focus on something that you have competitive advantage.
Yep.
And then just go all in.
Yeah, on
Just
top
go
of
all
drilling more oil.
on top of drilling more oil. Do we have time for one last question or one last question? Okay, one last question from the floor. I think I heard from the organizer. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Long from Vietnam Blockchain Corporation. Just a short question that in case of we call for foreign investment, because we put Vietnam blockchain is this the vision. So how do you think when you are the investor that you invest just for develop Vietnam? I just want to understand how the investor thinking. And the second time, if I work well with Vietnam, because here is a Asian awards. So if I bring that model into Malaysia, for example, how could we get the investment to grow up with Malaysia, the same model as Vietnam, because we work the same way in ASEAN. So that's just a sub-question.
Thank you. So the gentleman has a Vietnam blockchain-based business. So the question is, would you invest in a Vietnam blockchain business? Maybe you will go field?
Yeah, so we are in the process of raising a fund, which is why I know how painful fundraising is for early stage investing across Southeast Asia. And the two probably most interesting markets in Southeast Asia are Indonesia and Vietnam. And that's driven largely by the number of people in those countries. Vietnam obviously is the second most populous country in Southeast Asia. And Indonesia has benefited from a lot of venture money flowing in there, and the valuations are somewhat rich, right? And Vietnam hasn't yet caught up, but soon will. And there are great there are great startups and great founders in the country, and there's quite a bit of venture money there looking to invest in Vietnam. So I think any startup founder that has a good business in Vietnam right now is in a pretty good position.
Cool. Is that it? So I think that's all the time we have. So thank you to the wonderful panelists. Give them a round of applause for being here today, for taking the time.